call the meeting to order for the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners at the Harwich Water Department, 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. on Wednesday, November 9th, 2022 at 11:30 a.m. We have no executive session, no public comments or announcements. The consent agenda for October 26th, 2022, we're going to hold off for the next meeting. We have no abatements. On to old business, town charter bylaws discussion.
All right, so I did get and just for anyone following along, this is kind of building off the discussion for water ban enforcement regulations, town bylaws. I did get an initial response from town council. However, it wasn't all-encompassing, so I really think I'm going to have to pull him in and have a sit-down meeting. There wasn't a ton of context to the email at this point. I know he's on vacation, I think, through next week. So I think for the benefit of the conversation, it'd be best to hold off until we can get some dialogue.
Could I just ask one question?
Sorry?
You think, only because I just finished cleaning my office, do you think we should write something and present it to him? Or do you think he would pick that apart, he being our counsel?
I don't think it's a bad idea, because I think at least that can give him a direction that we're looking to go in.
Okay.
One of the things that I did ask in the initial email to him was about the fine structure.
Right.
The ability to remove that from the bylaw itself, which he, in that initial response, didn't think that that was an option to remove fines from the bylaw. But I don't have context as to why, so that's kind of why I want to bring him in and peel back the layers.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I'd be, again, to your question, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to get something on paper.
We'll see if something appears.
All right. New business, water liens.
In the packet, you have a memo from Sandy, so this is our FY23 lien list for water bills that have remained unpaid.
So looking at, is that 12,800 or 12,384?
884.
So does this require a motion?
Yes, we need a motion to approve the water liens for $12,884.55. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Well,
I asked for discussion.
all right.
Do you have a question?
Well, only, I just read this 13, not to exceed 13, but yet the other number is 12. I didn't notice that for that second, so.
Any idea about that, Dan?
If you give me 1 second, let me just see if I can ask Sandy.
All right.
First one, give me 1 second.
Maybe the list was amended after or something.
That's all right.
I don't read that fast.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't see.
This memo.
I thought it was a number that is in place from before.
On the front sheet, at the bottom left-hand corner? All right. Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
That's all right.
It's constantly changing. It's the total is moving, changes every day because somebody pays. So yeah, I think by the time I did the memo and printed the other one, somebody had paid. So.
So the correct number is the 12,008.
Yes, if you.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 13,000.
The 13.
Is there two different memos?
Yeah.
One memo.
No, there's one memo.
There's one memo.
Hold on a quick. There's one memo.
Yes.
We have the lien sheet.
Yes.
The lien sheet says $12,884.55. The memo says $13,723.35.
If you could please follow the memo.
The memo.
Yes.
All right. So we need a revote or a new motion for the water liens for FY 2023 not to exceed $13,723.35.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thanks. All right, Dan, lots of questions. Lots of questions.
All right. I'll do my
Now,
best.
in all fairness, I think I read 2 of the 3 PDF files, because the other ones were like 40 pages and 19 pages. And I read 2 of them at like 2 o'clock this morning. So, I don't even know where to start. I'll tell you what, why don't you start, and when I have my questions, I'll jump in. Because we have, the first one's like, what, 40 pages?
Yeah, so there's a red line strike-through version of the current 310 CMR 36. The proposed changes are all highlighted in red. All the other text in black is existing current regulations.
And, okay, so they wouldn't restrict, they wouldn't be taking anything out, they would just be adding in what's in red?
Yeah, everything
That's
that's
what
in
it
here, I think there may be some strike-throughs in some of the text, but yeah, it's all, this is the full breadth of the proposed regulations.
And are they, is the expectation that the board sends in something?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really,
Is that what happens?
that's the discussion, yeah. So the comment period is open right now. This is what they're proposing, and it's really our opportunity to voice comments, concerns, or issues with the proposed regulations.
And they're gonna hold 3 meetings to discuss this.
The 3 meetings were for the other one, for the watershed and the Title V regulations. So there's currently 3 regulations pending with DEP. The Water Management Act revisions, the Title V revisions, and the new watershed permit regulation. So this one is just the Water Management Act permit.
And are they doing a public meeting on this? Or you don't know?
I think they did one Zoom one. I don't believe they're holding another one. I know they were intending to adopt these several months ago, but they got delayed and they've extended it. I've been peripherally following along on the Mass Water Works Legislative Committee. They send out a lot of information on the regs. As I have some of their summary of their comments that I can go over. If you want to start there, or
So, this is just tells what they've already done, agreed upon, this is what we're gonna have to work with. And there really was no,
well, so the comments we provide at this point could lead to changes in the text. So, let me just pick one out that with me. Good. Okay, so if we can go to 3607 2C1, which is, and just as an example here.
Page 9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, here's an example of one of the comments that we could make and hopefully inspire some change. So, 2C1. So, this states that within 24 months, the water system needs to have adopted regulations at least as stringent as what they're proposing. What we would say is, it's not always as easy as we can just adopt these things. There's bylaws, there's town meeting, there's process that the town and municipalities need to go through to adopt these. So we would comment saying, instead of saying we shall within 24 months have this adopted, the town shall put forward for approval of the governing body regulations no more stringent than, or less stringent. So that's saying, give us more time, give us the 24 months to develop and put forward these regulations for the town to adopt, but acknowledging that the cycle of town meeting and everything only occurs once a year, it may not be feasible to do it in 24 months. So that's, in my opinion, a good comment that we could make, is saying, hey, pump the brakes a little, we're going to need time to get this formally adopted and memorialized in the town's bylaws.
I think that's a wonderful idea. There's no way that you can go through all of this and see how it pertains to us especially now. We're just going through a period of low yield and, what are you gonna do?
Right.
You know? And then, as far as putting more wells in the ground, and what, I mean, there's just so many things in this. There's just no way you could just do this instantly. You need time.
Noreen?
I have to admit, I really need for us to step back a bit. Now, at the end of this package were these documents.
Yeah.
And these were the same ones that we got last meeting, right? And these ones are the ones that refer to the 3 open meetings, Barnstable, wherever. But you're saying that these documents do not pertain to this document?
They do, yes. So this
Okay.
is, these were end of October, they had their public meetings.
I think there's more, but I'll look. All right, okay, maybe I just got confused because it looked like the same list. All right, but at any rate, so this document is the one that we talked about, that talks about an amendment to these regulations whereby the state would have more control over restrictions, like Monday, Wednesday,
Yeah.
2 days a week, cut back, whatever.
Exactly.
Now, so that's an amendment to this. But this document, which is the actual WMA regulations.
Yep.
I mean, why are they changing? What's really going on here before I even...
Yeah, so they are proposing to change them because they had attempted to regulate and impose drought restrictions, drought conditions on permitted or registered wells, which we have 10 of. And when they went to do that, I think it was Fairhaven that challenged it. It went up to the Supreme Court,
okay.
and the Supreme Court said, you don't have the ability to regulate or, restrict registered wells. You would have to do that through the promulgation of regulations. So that's what caused the whole thing to go down.
So, the Water Management Act regulations, did these get developed within the last 10 years for our watershed permits?
They predate. So we had a permit, so we have, and this is where it gets confusing, right? We have a water management act permit.
Right.
It's a 20-year permit cycle. It ended in 2010 from 1990. So that was for 4 of our wells, and then we have our 10 registered wells. The Water Management Act regulations only allowed them to limit, restrict, govern our 4 permanent wells, not our 10 registered ones. So this is seeking to now lump our other 10 in with the 4, so that when they issue us a new Water Management Act permit that has those 4 wells, the drought conditions that pertain to the 4 wells also now will pertain to the 10 registered wells. So they're trying to revise this to broaden it to include all of our sources instead of just the permitted ones.
So if we didn't have any watershed management permits, if we were in some area that, I don't know, didn't have water or something, then this would not apply to us.
Just for wells.
Well, it would now, well, it wouldn't up until they adopt these regulations. Absent a permit, we would have registered wells. So let's take our 4 permitted ones off the table.
All right.
If we just had the 10 registered wells, this is the regulation that gives them the hand in the cookie jar,
Right.
for lack of better terms, to now regulate us.
Right, yeah. But if we were a city that had their water pumped in through the MWRA or whatever, this would not,
So, with MWRA, I believe they would fall under the provision with respect to multi-year drought storage, because I believe the Quabbin Reservoir would meet the registrant's reserve
Okay.
capacity that would allow them to not be held to
yeah.
the
all right.
restrictions.
I'm just trying to understand where there's so many different sets of regulations and where this fits in
Yeah.
the puzzle. So, main reason for looking at this is over the issues caused by the drought.
Yeah, we're not voting on this. I mean, this is DP just giving us, this is information only, and this is what they're doing.
This is what their intent is,
Right.
and it's our responsibility, to really petition them and make them aware of any issues that we see with the regulations.
I see, okay.
Hopefully to inspire some revisions, revised language that's more amenable to
Right.
the public water supply.
Last question. So when you get to this part at the end, this was the part where you were talking about at last meeting, where you said most of the water managers would be very opposed to this portion of it. So that might be part of your response to this whole thing together.
Right, and some of the, I guess, points that highlight, issues, concerns with this. So Mass Waterworks did a very comprehensive memo, and I just want to confirm that I'm able to circulate it, because a lot of this stuff gets sent out to the legislative committee that's asked not to be distributed. So before I send it out, I just want to confirm. But I did kind of cherry pick from that memo what I thought was applicable to our system, just for discussion in this meeting. A couple of them I think we've talked about before, but it bears repeating. Financial impacts. If we go to, find the page here. Page 9. What they're saying under these new regulations is when a level 1 mild drought is declared, all non-essential outdoor water use is restricted to no more than 1 day per week before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m., except for irrigation of ornamentals, flower gardens, drip irrigation, handheld hose, watering cans. That's starkly different than what we have now, where the mild drought, level 1 drought triggers are precipitation based off of a national drought monitor. There isn't necessarily consideration for how much water is in the actual aquifer beneath our feet. Go back to 2016, we had a drought by declaration at the state level, yet our aquifer had an abundance of water, and we pumped more water that year than we had, I think, in the history of the department. We were able to do that because we had the capacity. Under the proposed revisions, regulations they're talking about now, that would have broad brush stroked all of the Cape Cod Basin into a level 1 drought, because Upper Cape was suffering, and would have mandated us to then restrict to 1 day a week before 9 or after 5, which then lends itself to big revenue issues, where if we're implementing a drought on restrictions based on a level 1 drought, based on precipitation, rainfall events that don't impact our aquifer, especially during drought season, because we don't get recharged during the summer, so anything that would fall wouldn't make a difference for us anyway. That's going to put us into restrictions, and certainly going to have an impact on revenue, because we're going to be much more likely to be thrown into restrictions.
So with these new revisions, there's not zones throughout the state as far as like different aquifers not being affected? I mean, why are they lumping every aquifer into one?
It's regional, but not sub-regional, in that we are in the Cape Cod Basin.
Right.
So there's 7 lenses in the Cape Cod Basin. Going back to 2016, we were fine. Our levels were fine.
Right. I remember that time.
Falmouth,
Right.
Upper Cape was suffering. That we would be lumped in
Right.
as the Cape Cod Basin. I would, if they're going to do something like that, it should be more lens specific.
Right.
Or the Cape Cod Basin should be divided into 3 so that P-Town isn't dealing, P-Town's in a different situation than Falmouth.
Right.
They just are.
Right.
I mean, it's what, 80 miles away,
they don't have the landmass to start with.
Right,
That's the concern that we have, I'm sure.
right. And that's
Locked
one of the other big things, you know, and the revenue component is a big portion of it, but when you translate that to the ratepayer, that could, these restrictions may, and I don't want to speculate on the probability, but there's a likelihood that we may have to raise rates without new infrastructure, without any added benefit to the
Right.
ratepayer. We're going to be asking people to pay more for less water. You know, and this was the big campaign that Harwich did when they initially tried to do this previously. I think that was at the time the case went all the way to the Supreme Court.
I know you can't speak on behalf of them, but what are they thinking by implementing something like that when it's too broad of a ban? It's just,
Yeah.
it needs to be more site-specific.
Right, and that's the comment, you know, that I think is important for us to articulate, and that's also, you know, very much in the comments that Mass Waterworks is putting forward, saying, hey, you know.
I do believe that the towns that are drawing from the same aquifer need to be on the same page. And I do believe we need to have the same restrictions. Because just when Harwich has one, and Dennis has another, and Bruce is doing another, we're all drawing from the same lens. We should all be on board, and that's something different. I mean,
Yeah,
or maybe not. Maybe that's where the state steps in and says, okay, this lens, this is what you all need to be. This is the same page we all need to be on. I mean, that makes more sense to me than a regional thing
Right.
or something like that.
right. And I agree. I mean, 100%, if they're gonna do it, it should be on an aquifer basis, not a regional,
Right.
geographical basis.
All right.
Thank you. You know, I almost, you know, what you've just described, and Waterworks as well, seems so basic. I don't understand why the government would put out something that is so against it and make everybody go through all the time and trouble. I mean, it seems reckless to me, really reckless.
Seems like typical government to me, so.
There you go.
Yeah, right around the time administration's changing. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cape Cod, our water, the lenses and the aquifer is very different from the rest of Massachusetts, so they can be general about the rest of Massachusetts, for them, I think, except for maybe,
Some of them are, and it's
but our,
there's stream flow triggers,
Yeah.
you know, which we don't have stream flow triggers. You know, in my discussions with DEP leading up, you know, going back 5, 6, 7 years, we've been, you know, having intermittent conversations with them. There was kind of a consensus, like, okay, there's gonna be groundwater trigger, the Brewster monitoring well outside Nickerson State Park. That's the one I get all the graphs from. There would be a combination of groundwater level and precipitation, which would then require us to implement a drought. It seems as though they've walked away from that consensus and are now saying, if there's a level 1 drought, 1 day a week, before 9 or after 5, which is starkly different than the conversations we had 5 years ago and doesn't lend itself to any local, you know, consideration. I do like the idea that on an aquifer basis, if we have the same restrictions as Dennis, Chatham, Brewster, that makes sense from a public, you know.
Yeah, you could define it in the Monomoy lens.
Right.
You know, there's 3 separate lenses. Provincetown, Truro, Eastham, and then Orleans to
Yeah.
Thames. And then once you go over the Bass River Bridge, another lens. Forget the name of it.
Sagamore lens.
Sagamore.
I think yes.
Yeah, I just don't understand the benefit of lumping everyone into one. Is it easier for them? I mean, I just don't understand it. I mean, everything's not black and white.
No, it's not. I don't envy DEP's position, because they're getting hit from the watershed associations saying, you water suppliers are pumping dry. There's no stream flow, you know, fish migration, all that sort of stuff. See, if the watershed associations from an environmental, not necessarily in Cape, it's more off Cape with the watershed associations, North Shore, Western Mass. But they're big advocacy groups that are trying to limit outdoor non-essential water use in hopes that that's going to help sustain and maintain stream flows. And
You have to think at the same point to narrow it down. Each department, each water department has their eye on this and understands what we're facing and has to be taking actions.
I don't want to pump us dry.
Deal with that, right? I mean, what's the, I mean,
There's no benefit to that.
Right, it should be like working together for the best outcome instead of all this paperwork.
Well, no, I think it's also though, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Carrie, but I think, I'm suspecting that they're looking at states like California that did not have anything in place at the local level, like that, and so they wanted to get ahead of it. Because there are towns that are pumping, and they're pumping diagonally down, and farms are doing the same thing, and it was a mess the last 3 years. So, I mean, I get it, and it's just not practical though. But that's our job to like get up there and say it's not practical, take it down to the lens level.
So how much time do we have to respond to this?
Well, so I can. You know, one other thing I just want to point out too is that on the aggregate, registered water users are not exceeding their registered water volumes. So is there really even a problem to correct? Right? I mean, if we're not pumping our wells dry, if we are, you know, maintaining and monitoring our resources, we're not over pumping, you know, what are we trying to fix? Which I think needs to be answered.
Is there anything in here about, so when you, the term registered wells, those are the town public wells as opposed to somebody's having a private well but the town knows about it?
Public water supply, yeah.
Public water supply.
Public water supply.
But there's nothing in here about private wells.
Yeah.
'Cause
And that
to
was
me,
an-
it's
It's another argument
sense,
in the Mass
right?
Water Works, you know, document is, we're only gonna push people to put private wells in, which
Yeah.
now we're not preventing anything,
Right.
you know, and for what it's worth, I think they're reasonably priced to put in on Cape Cod, you know,
Yeah.
drilling through rock or ledge. And we've seen, I mean, people, right, say, oh, we're just gonna put in a private well. We've had private well drillers very grateful of all the water bans that went in this year because they've been slammed.
Right. So did you say how long we have to respond to this?
It's November 16th, I think?
I got November 18th here.
Oh,
Is
18th,
that it?
okay, that's, yeah.
October 14th to October 18th, 5 p.m.
So I can I can certainly put together a draft, you know, summarizing our discussion today, kind of highlighting the points applicable to our system.
Right. The front step page.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did not read that. What's that? The department. It's one of the notes.
Yeah, and you know, they don't even send this stuff to us.
No.
You would think as a registered well that a public water supply.
What pages?
Oh, okay. It's at the
It's in
back.
it's
Oh,
in the back.
the end ones?
Yeah, well, I think it was on the top.
Keep going.
Well, honestly, Dan, I didn't read 40 pages of this. Last night. But the highlight to me would be, the most important thing to be, is not to be lumped in with everyone else. And like we just discussed, like, each lens on Cape Cod should be individual to the towns you're drawing from that, which I think we should all be on the same page as far as that goes, because, and even private wells, I mean, I didn't want to get to like trying to regulate private wells, but when we're all drawing from the same aquifer, so, I mean, there should be some kind of language in there. That's the priority that I think we need to address. I mean, as far as, you know, statewide. I mean, I don't know what's going on in Springfield. I mean, I
Right.
don't know.
And to that point, you know, on private wells, if the state's gonna do this, it's gonna push people to install private wells.
Right.
They should simultaneously be adopting regulations or provisions to require private wells to adhere to drought.
I agree.
You know,
Completely
I agree.
agree.
And I think it needs to come from the state.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with that. You know, when you're asking somebody to do the right thing, well, we're all in the same situation here. So, I mean, but I think it needs to come from the state, not just from us individually, because, again, how do you police that?
Right.
And does this, well, they did reference somewhere in, like, the next page, strategy for establishing local enforcement authority. Okay, so that's for public wells. So then, does this have to get approved by the state House and Senate? Or is it just DEP says what it says and it's
That
done?
I'm not 100% on.
It
I don't
just-
know the regular state
Yeah,
framework.
I should know this.
It just sounds to me like they're asking you if you have, you know, a response that you can send in by him, but doesn't say that you're gonna do anything with it. You can send it in,
Right.
but doesn't.
I don't
say
want to be
anyway,
too
does it?
cynical. That's my, that's
Well, I'm
my,
just saying, yeah, we can give our opinion, but doesn't mean they're gonna, you know, do anything with it.
Right.
Well, not only that, I mean, I would think there must be some legislative oversight, right? Because if the secretary and the commissioner are appointed, and there's gonna be a new administration in 8 weeks, or whatever the date is, it's just very close to that change of guard, so to speak, and
I fear that they could get more stringent with the new guard. But,
Noreen?
well, they can redo it then, I guess, yeah.
Now that we're looking at this page with the notice on it, I noticed that, and I'm gonna look it up, it might help me, but it says that all comments previously filed, for some reason it says in July of 2021, I would think it would be from then till now, but at any rate, they're available on the website, so it might be good for the layperson like me to read some of those, so I get a drift of what other people have been saying, you know, all along, and, you know, as you say, to try to wind up in the middle. You know, it's just, it's the right thing, like Gary says, but it's still, like, it feels so much, you know.
and that was the initial comment period. I don't know if it was COVID or what
Yeah,
caused them to delay it.
right. But you had some strong objections last meeting about the amendment that had to do with, remind me, I can't remember. Your objections were just that you felt that the water managers knew more than
Yeah.
the state, so
Yeah.
that still remains the same.
The uniqueness of the water
Yeah.
system, you know, and that's going even zooming in a little further. You know, we're talking about water, the aquifer, on an aquifer basis. It is system by system, the depth of wells, you know, that does all matter in your ability to produce the water. And that's not something that can be captured in text. I mean,
You know, I wonder how the public will react, you know, when you tell them we're doing this for our town and everything else. Is obviously there were abusers, but there were also a lot of other people that really, you know, were, you know, look at my brown lawn, you know, look at how great it looks. And when the state tells you to do something, you don't have that same warm fuzzy feeling, you know, but so be it. That's the way it is.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, sure.
This is to anybody, maybe a golfer in the room. I'm curious, they, in page 10, they, or somewhere, and again, I just did a cursory thing. It was just about golf club?
Golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this, what do you call it, the
The
fairway?
fairway and the greens.
Yeah, so I
Irrigation of trees and
understand
greens is-
the greens being irrigated, but I don't understand, is there a practical reason why the fairways need to
It's
be?
not, well, it's not saying fairways here, it's saying irrigation of tees and greens would be exempt. So it's saying, in order to conserve water while maintaining the core function of their business, golf courses will be required to limit water use by gradually reducing irrigation of ornamentals, fairways, and roughs. What would be watered are the tees and the greens.
But, yeah, so it's on page 10, it kind of goes into details like a mild drought, irrigation of fairways shall be reduced to 80% of normal. I guess I'm curious why, you know, I mean, are fairways like necessary to play
Yeah.
golf?
Yeah,
I
and
don't
fairways,
know.
yeah,
Not for me,
so,
because I like to play the rough.
well, if you
not
if you got a decent
sincerely.
shot, if you got a decent shot, yes. I'm always in the woods, but the fairways are, I'm trying to come up with a word, like,
It's hard to hit off of a brown grass kind of thing?
it's
Is that
the
the-
quality, the density, the length, like the fairway, you know how the green is basically like felt, right? It's, you know,
Right,
the green,
yeah.
the fairway is in between the felt and the rough. And there's a lot of money that goes into maintaining the fairways, establishing the fairways. So if you let those go, it could be a massive cost to try to restore them.
Especially the tees and the greens.
Yeah.
That's,
Greens I get, I guess,
yeah,
I
and the
just,
tees
it's
I
like,
get.
Because you don't hit on the fairway, you don't hit with the tee, so you're hitting the ball right off the grass. So with like an
maybe
iron,
they should change that.
well, I would benefit greatly if we
So,
took the off the
also,
I would rather you could use
also encourage DEP to put
slogan on it.
tees on the fairway.
One of the comments too that I thought was interesting, you know, that from the Mass Waterworks testimony, no, what's it called, testimony, but comments is that they were recommending that it not just be golf courses, but really all these other hospitality-like businesses, like the resorts and things that we have in town that are having, you know, six-figure landscapes that people are coming to their place of business to, you know, enjoy. Mass Waterworks is recommending that remove the golf course component and have it be like event spaces where people would have weddings and things like that, so that you can maintain those ornamentals, grasses for big events like that. Because those are core essential functions essentially of those businesses. If you're
Yeah,
a wedding
I get it.
venue,
I
you
don't
know.
like it, but I get it. Noreen?
I thought, I didn't realize they were exempt, those kinds of places. I
Well, they're
mean,
not now. They would be lumped in. Mass Waterworks was
I
saying
see.
we should.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah. I guess I meant to say, I didn't realize they weren't not exempt. But for instance, on page 10, as Jude's brought up, when we did our restrictions last year, where did the golf course wind up? Like this has that level 1, 80%, level 2, under number 2, and number 3. Where did they wind up when we did our thing?
I was asking Sean, because I'm not familiar with golf
Right.
courses. I had asked him.
Apparently not from what you said.
Or, you know, they're pumping.
You should do
their
more
whole-
research.
Yeah. So I was asking him, you know, how this was gonna impact
Right,
Cranberry Valley, because
Right.
they're
Yeah.
obviously being brought into this.
mhm,
And he didn't seem to think it was gonna be an issue, because they, I think, historically pump well below their registered volumes.
okay.
And their irrigation system is pretty new, I believe. They just did it, so it's high-tech. They
Are
can
they-
shut off.
Are they well or are they town?
They have their own, well.
So, would they even fall under these regulations?
Yeah.
The
If
new
they
ones.
have their own?
Yeah,
Even though.
because they're a registered golf, yeah, they're a
Because they're
registered well for a
public.
golf course, yeah. they're-
Okay.
We got, I think, you know, if we get
So,
something,
sorry, just,
Private golf courses?
once you get to, I believe, once you get to a certain gallon per day volume, I don't know if it's over 100,000 gallons per day, there's a threshold that once you get up above, you know, the state's involved.
Right.
As opposed to like an irrigation well for your house, you know, that's not gonna, they're not looking at that, but for the big users, they're regulating.
And that includes private golf courses.
Yeah.
But they have their own well, but they don't have their own, like, water.
They have their own permit too.
That's what I was
Yes.
gonna, oh, really?
So they're
Okay.
permitted through the state. If the golf course had a registered well that wasn't permitted, this is also now
Right.
bringing those into the loop. And I think on,
So they would follow, like Booster would have to follow the same things,
Yeah.
and, okay.
All right,
yeah, it's,
What do we do next?
Dan's gonna write a letter.
and hopefully it doesn't fall on deaf ears. It's, I try not,
Do you
I don't
want
wanna think like that, you know, but
Should we go to the meeting?
this, I don't know that,
Does it matter?
I don't think it, if you go to, you know, I don't know that it necessarily matters, because they'd have to take all written comments at the meetings, they all have to be compiled, and they all have to be, you know, I don't think there's a hierarchy to comments received at a meeting versus written comments.
I don't think the meetings are done, I
Up
think.
to, and they were right around Halloween,
Yeah.
which,
I thought there was one next week, sorry.
Can I ask a
Yep.
question? Sorry, I left the room right when you were mentioning page 10. The language about golf courses and the percentages, how is that monitored?
Point.
I believe,
20%, 30%, 40%, it's like arbitrary.
Right.
And how do you know when you reach that 60%? Like, who monitors that?
I imagine, like we do, they probably have to submit pumping reports, you know, how much water they pump in a day, and they probably have to show that reduction in their reporting pumping volumes. And then as far as, what's that?
It's all digitized.
Yeah, I mean, flow meters, you know, like we have,
Right.
you know, they know what they're pumping, so I imagine that's, and, yeah, and then with shutting down the system, at least as Sean had explained, their system, they can pretty much, with a click of a button, isolate.
I turned the page, but did it say that they have to reduce watering by 80%?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
No, 280%.
it's 280%.
So level 1 should be reduced to 80% of normal.
For the
For
fairways.
fairways, rough should be reduced to 50%, so there's a threshold for each.
Yeah, don't water the Russ. We don't need, don't water the Russ. It's a waste of water.
Just give everybody a tea.
I hate going
Give
there.
them all a tea.
That.
And it should be green or something, so they
No,
can
it
see.
should be a lot of things. It should be a lot of things. All right.
Now, I missed up my packet, so tell me the next group.
Title 5 regulations revision.
And what pages, what that? Oh, I didn't miss it, okay.
The new business, right?
Well, actually, I don't have it in here.
Neither do I, so
Yeah, I
that's
don't
good.
have it. I had it
We
by-
do, it doesn't have a cover.
That's the worship permit. I have.
Isn't that what we're doing? No.
No, we're doing Title 5 right now. The
Yeah.
next is that's the watershed.
No. Title
Unless my
5.
thing messed up.
I don't know.
The draft from October 28th, is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, so this permit, and then this one right
Is
here
that Title 5?
is the Title 5.
My pages got mixed up.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I
Read
have-
that first line there.
Right, this goes with this. This was on here like this. That's what
Oh.
I'm saying. That's
And then
this.
Noreen,
Right,
can you
that's
go
what we-
there?
Hold on a second. Now you go right there. Right,
All
that's
right, so
that.
this goes down through the end of,
That's this. That's watershed right there.
does this end on a page number
No,
19?
that's Title 5.
That's Title 5, this is what, that's
Oh,
which
okay.
one.
You're there, I think you're halfway, I think it's, you have both of them combined.
Yeah,
So-
right.
Well, they both have the same date.
Yeah,
I did too.
doesn't
That's the last
make
page
any,
right there, I think. That's the watershed permit right there. That's
Okay,
Where's the water, your watershed permit thing?
that we already discussed.
No, nope. That's next, after this. We're doing Title V right here.
Thank you.
That's that. Okay, here we go.
Right, where am I?
All right, let's get Jen.
Yeah, it's like 20 pages into the next one.
So it's the only one that's,
It ends on this yellow
Yeah.
thing.
Right here.
yeah,
Watershed regulations?
that one.
That one.
Yeah, yeah, all
All
right.
right, so are we all on Title V? All right. Alan?
Yeah.
You with us? All right. Well, he's got his own stuff. He knows what he's doing. So, from what I did read on the Title V, with these are new, the revision.
Yeah.
DEP is saying that if we don't have a sewer system in place, that we have to, within 5 years, get the latest technology system installed. At obviously the cost to the homeowner. So basically they're doing away with Title V.
Not
Trying to-
necessarily doing away with it. And it's interesting how they're doing this, because they're doing it through two regulations. So, Title V is being amended, so current regulations, an NSA is a nitrogen-sensitive area. An NSA, under the current regulations, includes water resource protection areas. Like when you drive up to East Harwich and you see the drinking water protection area sign, all of East Harwich is an NSA. What they're looking to do is establish a, what do they want to call it? It's there's a nitrogen NSA, I'm trying to get the exact definition here. Yeah, so the designation of nitrogen-sensitive area. So what they're doing is amending it so that instead of just being areas for drinking water protection, they're also saying if you are in a contributing area to an impaired estuary, that is a nitrogen-sensitive NSA. So if you have, like East Harwich, just because it's easy to talk about, we have 5 years to either apply for a watershed permit or implement the most recent best available IA technology throughout the watershed. So they're doing it in two places. They're amending Title V to basically say you have to do IA systems if you're in a watershed, and if you're in an impaired watershed. Absent watershed permit, they would pretty much be doing away with Title V. There's no more conventional septic systems. They're all innovative alternatives. As an option to not have to do that, that's why they're introducing the watershed permit regulations. So in Harwich, we have 5 impaired watersheds. East Harwich, Heron River, Saquatucket, Witchmere, and
Pleasant Bay.
Pleasant Bay. Can't forget Pleasant Bay. So what they're saying is within 5 years, we either need to switch out all the available septic systems with IA or do a watershed permit. Where the town, so I rewind a little bit. So where this regulations are really town, they're impacting the town, not specifically this board, not necessarily just the Board of Health, not necessarily just the Board of Selectmen, but it's a pretty broad thing that they're trying to accomplish. What I'm hoping to do, and we have some more time with these ones, is get a full comprehensive comment list, Town of Harwich comment list from the Board of Health, including Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners, including Board of Selectmen, as to all of the potential issues or concerns we have with the permit.
Probably also want to loop in the local comprehensive people, because they're in the middle of doing this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, not maybe as one of the movers, but let them know for their report
Yeah.
what we are talking about.
I am meeting with Mark Drainville from GHD on Monday. We're going to start to lay out a draft list of comments It's my intent to try to get a comprehensive draft together to circulate to all of the boards, bodies, committees, and say, here's what we've assembled. Please, let us know if there's anything that we didn't hit that you want to emphasize more to try to make it an easier process. With Title V regs, there's a couple things issues I have, right? With the watershed permit, if we want to apply for a watershed permit, we need to document that what we're proposing to do is going to work. By saying, here, we're capturing 1,000 houses with sewer, it's going to remove X amount of nitrogen. We have an onus to provide burden of proof. That same thing doesn't exist with the IA technologies. We don't even know if the best available technology will work in Saquatucket Harbor.
Doesn't our certified accepted CWMP of 2016, when they accepted that, wasn't that them saying, oh yes, you've proved that by doing this, it will remove, say, Saquatucket?
Yes.
So didn't we already do that?
We have at least one step further along than other people. So
I mean, it just seems we did that at great expense and great amount of time.
So I think we're going to have to harvest data from that document specific to Saquatucket, and we're going to have to use that information to apply for a specific Saquatucket watershed permit. So it wasn't necessarily for nothing. We'll still have, hey, this is the geographic sewered area we're talking about, here's the nitrogen we're going to remove, but we will have to apply for an individual watershed permit for each of the 5 watersheds in Harwich.
But I mean, it is that information you said that they accepted.
Yes.
What's kind of interesting is here they're going to the micro level, but on the drought, they're doing macro level.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just curious if you know, and I need to do a much deeper dive into this, alternative system certified by Department for General Use pursuant to 310, Mass General Law. The DEP had been talking for some time about changing their regulations so if another state in EPA Region 1 had certified alternative systems, that they were going to not make that system be retested in Massachusetts for a 5-year period.
So
But do you know if they ever did that?
they have a provision, let me see if I can find it real quick.
And I'm thinking particularly about Long Island, New York, which, well, their coastal embayments are in much worse shape.
Because I remember seeing language that if it's not one that's approved for general use, that you can use it if an engineer, I think, signs off on it. I think there was a provision to use one that wasn't for general use, but for piloting purposes. So the big names that people throw out are the Nitro, the Nitrex, IA systems. Those I don't know that they have general use, but they're under piloting. I believe that those would be able to be used in this instance.
And so I guess they're just gonna, what's the idea, that they pull every household that's got a septic and send them a bill? I don't know.
It just seems crazy to me that they're giving you as an option for each house to do something totally different or to go with the permitted watershed. But still kind of holding our feet to the fire as to like how much we're gonna remove. Like, so you're telling me you'd rather see each house do something different instead of just having it all a little more,
The one instance, and this is and this is one of the things that I think they need to go back to the drawing board on, right? But one instance I could think that could be, could work, right? Brewster. They've been toying with the idea. They may do it, they may not. But as a hypothetical, they only have a few hundred houses that are contributing nitrogen to Pleasant Bay. They could likely, in 5 years, accomplish what they needed to, converting to IA. Harwich, where it pretty much encompasses the entire town, there's no way that we could put up to 10,000 innovative systems in 5 years. It's just not feasible. So it's really,
And how would we even do the sewers in 5 years? Like,
sewers, they give us 20 years.
oh, okay, all right.
So that's the one, and this is, I try to read between the
We had
lines.
40, now we're down to 20.
And I've had a number of meetings with DEP. They've come to a couple Pleasant Bay Alliance meetings, I've voiced a number of comments to them, and I plan on putting them all down in text and submitting them officially. But they've, one of the things I brought up is we have 5 watersheds. The amount of work that it's going to take to manage 5 watersheds simultaneously, it's like there aren't enough days in the week to have the bi-weekly progress meetings for the 5 watersheds and get anything done.
Workforce development.
It's building government, which we don't want to do, So, it's like they gave us one option that's completely incapable, it's just not possible. And then they said, here's your out with the watershed plan.
All right, Noreen.
So this is, you're right, the stick they're using to make us go the management permit way. And even though this method, 5 years of upgraded septics or whatever, is totally not feasible for us, I just had a thought, which is, if we were to comment on this and say, sounds great, but we need 10 years, by doing, even though we have no intention of doing it, I'm trying to play the government way, wouldn't that extend our period for the WMA, for the water management permits? In other words, if they were to rewrite this document and say, okay, we listened to everybody, and now we're going to give you 10 years, wouldn't that increase our period? So maybe, even though we have absolutely no intentions of doing that, maybe that should be a criticism of, since they've separated the documents. I know.
It's a good angle. It's a good angle.
That's what needs to happen.
Right.
Play their game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
5 years, no way.
Just what a waste of time and energy and money, I mean, come on.
But I mean,
They
we're not,
couldn't even come and look at that vernal pool. Seriously. And how many meetings have they had on Pleasant Bay?
they haven't come to our Board of Selectmen yet.
I tried.
I know you tried. It's been 6 months, and they loved us, and they were gonna come to everything. Remember, everybody was saying they were being so cooperative, and when, this is how cooperative they are.
I was trying to get into a November meeting, but where they have their public meetings for this, they didn't think that they were going to be able to make it.
I'm sure every other town is going to feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way you could get the taxpayers to come up with the millions of
No,
dollars
no, 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 no.
necessary. I mean, look what we've spent
Yeah,
each town, and we're still doing it.
No, but I mean, I do like the idea of commenting back and saying, it's a great plan, but we need 10 years. And that would give us some breathing room on doing what we intend to do anyway.
It'd give us
Well,
40 to 30 instead of 40 to 20.
Right, and especially since you have 5 watersheds, just the permitting alone will be 4 or 5 years.
One question to follow on that. With this new infrastructure money, I'm starting to read all these shortcuts that people are putting together to understand what money is available for things. And it sounds like they're like redoing the whole water fund thing. So with this, in other words, could it be that they're putting it down as 5 years because that will allow the state to go after some federal money, which will come back to the towns to pay for a 5-year I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean,
wonder.
I'm gonna guess and answer, but correct me. Since this is private homes, I mean, if we said, well, we as a town, we're gonna pay for everything. We're gonna pay for your new septic and your new septic, and we're gonna do it all, then we could probably get a piece of that money through the SRF.
Right.
But other than that, I don't know any other, there's no other way that I'm familiar with, but I'm no expert on infrastructure.
Well, what I've been reading was that they're changing, or that there's a push to change how the SRF.
Really?
Yeah.
I hope so. Well, I've been pushing them. I've talked to SRF a couple times. You know, as the person who's going to be the point person to implement this, like trying to lay the groundwork to try to get changes needed that I see that will enable us to do it. Funding's a big one, and I say it time and time again to them is we need to know what the infrastructure money means to us at the local level.
Yeah.
Without that, I have no ability to answer the question about what the tax impact is going to be. I don't have the, hey, you know this $50 million project, it's only going to cost us 25 because the federal infrastructure, like those are things that get these passed and they give us nothing. I've heard that they're going to augment some of the already existing programs, the Disadvantaged Communities program, you know, that they're going to increase some of those principal forgiveness amounts, but
Yeah. But just,
I'll put a call into Congressman Keating's aide to see if they have they're thinking of putting together a packet for boards like ours.
Noreen?
no, just venting. I mean, to talk about disadvantaged communities on one page and then on the next page say you're gonna spend 200 million, I mean, my brain just can't, you know, it's like, okay, you're a disadvantaged community and come up with a couple $100 million, you know, it makes no sense to me.
get 7% off your 9% inflation.
Sorry, never mind.
So, we have more time with this one. We don't necessarily need to come to some consensus today. Like I said, I'm going to be sitting down with Mark next week to try to get draft comments together. We do have another meeting, the 30th. These ones close on December 5th, I think. So I think at the next meeting I should have December 5th, or December 16th, sorry, 5 p.m., December 16th. So we have time on these ones to get comments back. So next meeting I'll be able to bring back a list and we can hash out if there's any additions, subtractions.
All right.
Thank you.
It's going to be interesting. There's a lot that they're not thinking about, and you know, I don't necessarily think their heart's not in the right place.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
all over the board.
And they've been understaffed, from what I've heard.
I don't want to hear anyone
Yeah.
complain about being
Everybody's
understaffed.
All right, are you good to move on to the watershed? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the same
Same thing.
thing. They're one and the same, essentially.
All right.
Kind of how I see it.
So we are,
So both these we have till December 16th. Okay.
Change the rules and you can mandate.
Yeah.
All right, then. You want to move on to superintendent's report, or?
Yeah, sure. We're all good?
could I ask one question on that?
Yep.
How about on the last one, this is the one that still has a meeting in Barnstable
Yeah.
on December 5th. So how does that play in with all of these
On
issues?
the watershed,
Yeah. So that would be, I hazard to guess, they're going to give the canned PowerPoint presentation I've seen 3 or 4 times. And then they're gonna allow, you know, the back and forth.
Questions on index
Yeah.
cards,
You know, and I just feel like submitting it in writing is better.
No, I mean, I agree.
So yeah, there's a
It's
couple-
tempting to go and hear it, but I don't know what to say. If anybody's interested in going,
I
might-
am if it'll fit my schedule.
Yeah, maybe. I'm like on the fence, but I might be interested in going.
And there's remote options for off-grading too.
Yeah,
So-
well, after Thanksgiving, we can send each other an email, Judith.
Awesome.
All right?
Is there a date in here?
Yeah, on the very end, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's December,
Letter on there.
Oh, yeah.
December 5th? Is that, am I reading that right?
Yeah.
December-
Yep, possible town hall.
That was the 5th date I had in my head.
What time is that? It's in the evening.
6 PM. It's hard for me to even believe some of the things suggested are real. I think I almost have to see people just to believe them, I mean, it's like, maybe I better not. It's like, are you all right? You know what I'm saying?
You have it in the packet.
Yep. Okay.
It's in there, but it's... Okay.
Superintendent's report there?
Yeah, so since last meeting, the sanitary survey was in between the last two
Yep.
meetings, I believe, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so DEP came down, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago.
Last
to
Tuesday.
do our, last Tuesday, thank you. To do our triannual sanitary survey. Don't have anything in writing yet. The only comments that we discussed were going to be recommendations, no mandatory actions or anything like that. But they did say that there is, potential with all of our activity here, storage piles of the, material, T-base for when we repair road excavations, things like that, really should not be stored so close to here. It's a discussion we've had a couple times over the past. So that was really the big one, but other than that, they had no real comments, so.
All right.
We have tank inspections, our annual sanitary and security inspections for all the tanks, as well as adhesion testing for the Pleasant Lake tank, and I think we're doing rover inspections on the Lothrop and 39 tanks. We'll be sending a underwater drone. Those are kind of the big annual upcoming things. We got the bids in for the well 7 replacement. The low bid was DLMAR, who is the company that won the well 4 cleaning and redevelopment project. The bids range from 38,000, I think it was 38,100. We had 4 bidders to a high of 63,000. So we had a pretty big,
Difference.
pretty big gap.
Amazing.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So what happens if the lowest bid underbid, like,
I don't think so there was a 38 and a 41 and a
Oh,
50
okay.
and a 63. So
Okay.
it was pretty,
they were
yeah,
in the,
yeah.
And that, the winning bidder's here already.
Yeah, they should be coming out, I think, next week to start well 4,
Good.
to get going on that. We also have our master meter calibration next week, I believe, where the subcontractor comes in and we flush all of our raw water, treatment plant, meters, everything, and calibrate those and retest those. We do that annually. So those are the big.
I think Noreen has a question.
Because I'm
Because she's
looking at
staring at
Gary.
me.
Yeah. that's right.
She's staring at me.
It's better when I wave my finger at you. So, well 7, is that going to be an article for May, or do we have funds?
That we have funds within the operating budget. So we will
Okay.
have to transfer in between expense line items, because we typically carry
Yep.
45,000, but we have the 18 for the cleaning and redevelopment, and then 38, so we'll have to move some
Gotcha.
into that line to cover the rest of it. But
Okay.
that is why, if anyone ever asks, why we always carry 45,000 in that
Mhm.
well line, whether we use it or not, because
Yep.
we needed it twice this year. I think that's all I have.
All right. Commissioners, Mr. Thompson,
I'm good.
Ms. Underwood,
I got a lot to think
Ms.
about.
Donahue.
I have a question.
I can't believe it.
So I was wondering if we heard anything from the Board of Selectmen on joining us.
Yes, thank you. November 30th, I did hear back from administration. Joe is planning to be here. I haven't heard back from Michael yet. I know he was away with limited service, so.
What do you mean? He was,
He tried to call him the other day and he had texted and said, hey, I saw you called, but I'm away with limited service.
oh, okay.
So,
Limited self-service.
Yeah, self-service.
It's limited service.
He's in the woods, he's fine.
yeah.
Right, he's in the,
Yeah,
he's in
it's
the
not
tree
bad.
stand.
Okay. All right, so that's a maybe. Should we make well, good, so it's in process. Thank you.
For the 30th.
The 30th, yeah.
Mr. Goff?
Also.
All right, I have nothing. Just our next meeting, obviously, is the 30th. That's 3 weeks out? Oh, that's because next week's Thanksgiving week. All right, is that good with everybody? Next, the 30th at 11:30.
Good.
All right?
We'll be heading towards Christmas.
Stop.
I know.
Stop.
God.
Stop.
Nothing but color this
I
year.
really think we should move it to February so we get like a little,
A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Christmas, did you